walk off the meal here. But thank you for coming. Today I'd like to talk about art in public as well as the public realm and how that relationship affects human health, ecosystem quality, resource depletion, and economic development. I figure this is a good place to start, being the Grant Wood Symposium, one of the most recognized pieces of art in the nation as well as beyond. And you don't have to go very far to see its influence on culture. These are my grandparents. My grandpa just celebrated his 90th birthday, and so it has far-reaching influences in large and small ways. When you Google art in public, these are the first 4 images that come up. I think their range is very telling, as well as how it's, oops, I just shut that off. Oops. As well as how it's defined. What I am struggling with as a professional is how this can be considered art, but this is considered architecture or landscape architecture. I don't necessarily believe there's much of a difference, but I should note, not everyone agrees. I'm not going to get into the weeds today, but I think we can dive in here with a contemporary of Grant Wood's and just understand how culture can't happen without art and art can't happen without culture. And that relationship influences us at a very, very early age. I think seeing these two side by side can speak volumes. Perhaps the best people to speak to the role of place-specific design are both the native populations that first inhabited this land as well as the homesteaders, both of which followed a very prescriptive set of principles to make life habitable here. Evergreens create your wind block. Deciduous trees create shade in summer, etc. And I'm going to jump to a personal example here where I try to take that approach when looking at a place and analyzing how it feels and what it means as the basis of design. Go back here quick. And that can be scaled up or down. I think it's very easy to see. We have buggy space, even back in the area, pedestrian space, water, and culture all interacting together. Or even in New York, where here you see a public park, space for cars and horses, and the public way. Basically, we're talking about community planning, also known as creative placemaking, or it could be summed up just as art as design. This afternoon, our keynote speaker will speak a little more to that subject, so we look forward to that. But I want to start with how I became interested in this subject and walk you through some examples of my work and the work of our firm, as well as precedents that have inspired and informed me along the way. This is me and my 3 brothers on our Century Family Farm just in northern Lynn County. And throughout my lifetime, this has become a very familiar scene. Declining population, empty storefronts, and culture completely detached from a changing economy they've struggled to adapt to. If we look at the whole US population, it's kind of easy to understand why we're so politically divided right now. Half the freaking country is in decline, and they're in a boat without a paddle, not knowing where to go, not knowing what resources are available. And so we've been trying really hard to connect communities to those resources. In Iowa, it's even bleaker. All the red is decline, all the white is basically stagnation. As part of my graduate thesis, I looked at just Main Street buildings briefly and wanted to know what their impact was in terms of embodied energy. I looked just at communities under 1,000 and just at buildings, and their embodied energy, meaning all the costs to extract materials, build materials, labor, ended up being 138% greater than the BP oil spill. The problem is that doesn't include roads, doesn't include sewers, it doesn't include sidewalks, and it's actually communities 5,000 and up that are struggling with this. Once you get to around 10,000, you have more full-time government employees that can take on some of this projects. Otherwise, you're asking people working 40 hours a week and volunteering for their government to try and get grants that they have no experience with. So that's a big hurdle to some of these. Part of the problem, admittedly, is with us. This is probably what most people think of when they think of architects, high-minded men in suits imposing their vision on the world. Very terrible. Unfortunately, our more recent representation isn't much better. Black spectacles and scarves, and again, grand designs that really are devoid from culture and place. This is more what design and placemaking is about. Participatory design and community involvement, empowering people. So what we try to do is engage local artists when possible and make it an integral part of the design, not an afterthought. Preservation, giving new life to old buildings. I don't know why we let a building get 50, 100 years old and tear it down and take $1,000 vacations to Rome. We have history here, and it's equally as important to preserve. As well as engaging with nature and our natural environment, because they are codependent. We like to think of our work as economic development, not just architecture, not just landscape architecture, but the effects of the edge of the building to the middle of the street and what that does for business owners, how that brings people in the door, how that allows them to put displays in the windows and life on the streets. What we try and do is take buildings like this and work with communities with limited resources and do small contracts, just images that can accompany grant applications and get projects actually funded. No one can build off of this. This is just a quick illustration of what it can become or the intent of the project. Once a project's funded, we can go into construction documents and a contractor can actually build from that to bring new life to these places, to these main streets, and to these communities. Another volunteer organization I work with is Community Visioning out of ISU, an amazing program that targets communities under 10,000 and works with them basically on visioning material and helps them think what their community can become when they've walked past the same place years and years and only seen it decline. Then they have all of these resources to accompany grant applications and try and stand out amongst competitors. And even on small scales, it highlights and celebrates the culture and the economy that have kind of diverged because of the changing forces and means of agricultural production. I work with the Linn County Historic Preservation Commission, and I don't have time to actually go into this, but we have an online portal where you can zoom in to any community in Linn County. We're unique because we've had the whole county surveyed for our historic inventory and what is eligible to be nominated to the National Registry of Historic Places, and people can click and read the reports of specific properties or specific places in their communities to start engagement. We also work with the local ACE program, which it stands for Architecture, Construction, and Engineering, and introduces young high school kids to these career paths based on their interests, based on personality tests, and there's interviews of professionals there. I will admit I never thought I'd be in this profession when I was in high school. I wasn't even interested in it. I thought it was math, blueprints, nothing creative, and I was completely wrong, thank God. But let's start early, and let's engage the youth and teach them about stewardship. This is a monarch seed ball project we do and distribute throughout the town. So each of these are little seed bombs that support native pollinators and butterflies, and we put them in libraries and coffee shops. Oops, all this is fine. I like to say, let's use our utilities as amenities. Every downspout and every storm sewer inlet is a missed opportunity to introduce some native vegetation, liven up the streets, green the streets up, provide shade, and make it more attractive for businesses, make it more attractive for people to patron that area. That's how you create places of repose, places of connection, places that have meaning within our urban environments, whether large or whether small and simple, like the bike racks. I also want to talk about highlighting the assets that we have and not turning our back on them and thinking we need to bring something entirely new in. This is Gasworks Park in Seattle. This is still a factory at this time, but it was art that started this project after the factory closed and created great public space that kept their historic heritage and legacy intact to speak to this new urban environment. And it actually facilitates art, and just to make sure this wasn't some strange isolated incident in the 70s, I found this. So it continues to be a gathering space, it continues to be a branding opportunity, and it continues to be a dialogue with art and public space. Another example is Granville Island in Vancouver, BC. Again, an old factory that closed after World War II that has become a public market, a public space, and can still brag about having an operating cement plant in the area, driving in the same streets as pedestrians, but branded, highlighted, and defined through art and social interaction. I love when old and new meet together. It helps inform you where you came from, where you are today, and where you may be going in the future. Here's a couple examples of that where old grain silos become museums or almost cathedrals to history and culture. We have these opportunities all around us right now. It's just a matter of bringing disparate organizations together to facilitate big impacts. This is an example in Cedar Rapids, an icon everyone drives past almost every day, and a perfect blank canvas or opportunity for a mural. And again, those icons influence us at an early age. So let's highlight them, because this place has fed many people throughout the nation, created economic opportunity for families. It's not just a factory we should turn our back to and say, this is not art and this is. I think those can exist together. This, I don't know if I'll play the whole thing, but this is an example on Blairs Ferry Road in Cedar Rapids, where they tore down the Nash Finch site to put up a gander mountain that I think was open for 2 days before they went out of business, the whole organization, and some strip malls. But the important thing is, this might not be the answer for every opportunity, but this will never be built again. So we've lost an opportunity to connect to what it was and have pride in where we are today. This is what replaced it. You might say, Michael, this isn't fair, this isn't done yet, you can see them working, there's nothing planted. Okay, fine. I'll give you a break. Michael, it's still not fair, there's no business there yet. Okay, fine, we'll wait till the business is in. But the thing is, where is this and what does it respond to? Absolutely nothing. You can put it anywhere, period. I'm gonna take a little break and let this guy rant for a short bit, because I think he's a little more articulate maybe than I am. But I think his point is very important.
Consequently, these will be places that nobody wants to be in. These will be places that are not worth caring about.
Let's get him big. Oh, there we are.
We have about 38,000 places that are not worth caring about in the United States today. When we have enough of them, we're going to have a nation that's not worth defending.
Sorry for the quality.
When you think about that, when you think about those young men and women who are over in places like Iraq, spilling their blood in the sand, and ask yourself, what is their last thought of home? I hope it's not the curb cut between the Chuck E. Cheese and the Target store, because that's not good enough for Americans.
I would probably say that's not good enough for anybody, but I can't agree with him more. I don't know if anyone remembers this from the 80s. I'm going to go ahead and play the commercial quickly for you. But I want to get a little scientific here and say why this is critically important and not just about pretty places. So I'm going to play this commercial to see if you remember it.
Only one drug is so addictive, 9 out of 10 laboratory rats will use it. And use it. And use it. Until dead.
The rat dies, if you didn't know. So that's an anti-cocaine commercial from the 80s. And basically what they did there was set up a cage, put a rat in it, have a water bottle, and have a water bottle laced with cocaine. The rat chooses the cocaine water, gets addicted, and dies. So another researcher was like, what about context? What about place? So he creates Rat Park, where there's other rats, there's plenty of space, there's toys, there's things to engage them, there's things to have a rat culture. Same 2 water bottles, the rats never touch the cocaine-laced water bottle the whole time. So I think these are his conclusions, but I think the implications for placemaking and art and meaningful places is apparent right there. We need places where we can bump into a neighbor and have a meaningful conversation, where we can see places that we want to go to. What better marketing for a business than to see people improving or enjoying your product right outside? It also deters crime, because there's eyes on the street and it's harder to get away with things, and you've created safer neighborhoods. You need places to pause and catch yourself off guard, places to reflect on where you are in time and where you are in culture, because that's how we create meaning. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be as simple as paint and palettes. And so there should be no barriers, whether it's an urban environment or a rural environment. In Marion here, they've taken an alley and transformed it into places for people, places to gather, places to celebrate art. And we were happy to make, very literally, a small contribution to this effort. And I'll just end with this little rendering we did. Developer was trying to liven up this part of the area, and this was an early schematic proposal. This was really all we did with the developer, but again, seeing how those lessons can be implemented anywhere and at any scale. And as that wraps up, that is it for me. So thank you.